Okay, hello. My name is Scott Young. I'm the Mentor Experience Manager for Speak Mentorship. So I've probably been emailing with you if we haven't talked for the screening call already. So this is our mentor training webinar. Normally I do these live, but we do have a recorded version for those that, absolutely can't make the schedule. Sometimes we've had scheduling conflicts, technical difficulties, that kind of thing. So as a last resort, there is this recorded version. And so you're going to get all the same information as the live webinar. It's just obviously won't be able to ask questions directly, but please feel free to email me at any time with questions that you have as we go through some of the topics. So welcome. Thank you so much for applying to be a mentor. We really, obviously, we couldn't function without our volunteer mentors. You all really help us reach as many young women as possible through your mentorship, through your support on social media, and of course through financial donations. We really appreciate all of the support that you give us and continue to give us. It means a lot to us, and it just really helps us make an impact for the many girls that we work with. So what is SPEAK? SPEAK is an acronym. It stands for Support, Prepare, Empower Aspiring Kids. Or I guess it's an acrostic. I always get those confused. But yeah, so we really believe in empowering young women through giving them the tools that they need to prepare themselves and aspire to reach the goals that they want to set. As they look at, ending high school and possibly going into college or the professional field. Speak Mentorship was founded in 2015 and with the express purpose of working with young girls from immigrant families. And since that time, we've worked with hundreds of girls and women. We have over 200 mentors now. As well as we used some parts of our program to do a girl empowerment program internationally in Ghana and in India. So even though we're a small program, we try to have a really big impact. We strive for a world where there are more women or folks who identify as women that are from all backgrounds, that are in positions of leadership in all types of professional fields. So we're aiming for that. That is our vision that we see, that we strive for. And we do that through working towards our mission, which is to develop the social and cultural capital of girls to become leaders in whatever field they want to go into. And so we want to give them, like I said, the tools and that capital to become leaders. Oops, let's try this. There we go. Okay. So the team is pretty small. We have a board that there's a couple of our board members you can see there. And the director and founder of Speak Mentorship is Hethel Johnny, and she is still our program director today. So most of us work on a volunteer basis, and we all just really believe in the goal and the vision that I just mentioned. So this is for the live version, so we'll skip that. So who are our mentees? Our mentees are young people who identify as girls, who are between grades 9 and 12, so freshmen to juniors, and between the ages of 14 and 18. Predominantly, we do have sometimes girls that are a little bit older. It just kind of depends on the cohort at that time. But typically we partner directly with schools and with high schools on the East Coast right now. We are looking to expand, but one step at a time. And so the young women that we work with all come from immigrant backgrounds. And so that means that either their parents immigrated to the US or they immigrated on their own. They came as babies. They came last year. You know, they're first generation Americans. Just, it could really mean a wide range of identities, but that common identity is that they consider themselves coming from an immigrant background. We've had young girls that from over 34 different countries participate in our program, so there's no one immigrant experience, but they do share that kind of multicultural existence wherever they live now. They do also receive parent permission to participate in the program, and typically they apply for the program. Sometimes we have partners at our schools, so counselors or teachers, they will kind of nominate some of the girls to participate in the program, but then they still have to apply. So we do want to make sure that they, you know, want to participate in the program and that their family, their parents, guardians are aware. Some materials that you should have received. You should have received the Speak Mentorship Handbook, which kind of gives you an overview of all of our programs and a little bit in-depth explanation of what we consider the role of the mentor to be. So definitely worth looking through. And then you also should have received and finished the Mentor Instructional Guide. And so that's the one that has the session guides for each of the 9 sessions and some information about policies and procedures. So I won't go over all of it because, as I said, it is in the Mentor Handbook and in the instructional guide, but just to go over some of the key takeaways. So the role of a mentor as it relates to our program is to serve as a role model and a positive influence, and not to be a parent. So that might be difficult for some of us who are parents, but it's really important that as we're talking to these young women, you know, we're not an authority figure. We're someone who has experience that, you know, we want to share with them and could be useful for them, but we're not telling them what to do or how to do it. And we really want to keep that relationship as organic and as close to a friendship as possible, right? We also want to practice active listening and empathy. It's really easy when we have our, you know, our curriculum, our session guides to want to explain, you know, all of the skills that we want to share with them. But we also want to make sure that we're listening to them and checking in with them, make sure they're doing okay. You know, even though we do have the session guide, it's not a script. You know, take time to get to know them and to check in with them regularly. We want to create a safe space that's free from judgment, as in addition to being immigrants, you know, they're young teenage girls, so they're kind of developing who they are and what identities they want to carry with them. And so we want to make sure that, you know, we're not going to judge them if they're like, actually, I don't really want to study, you know, medicine. I really want to be a writer, or whatever may be the case. Or, you know, I don't know if I want to go to college. I might want to, you know, join the military. Who knows? Chances are they'll change their mind anyways, because you change your mind a lot when you're a young person. But whatever it is that they're kind of exploring in their own mind about the goals they want to set or who they are or what they want to do in school, we just want to be supportive, you know, ask them questions, you know, why are they thinking that? Have they looked into it? Give them tips on how to research and find out more information and to see, you know, how serious they are and if that's something they're really interested in doing and why. We also want to share our own experiences. You know, as a professional adults, we have a lot of experiences, a lot of maybe mistakes that we learned from, or resources we took advantage of that we want to share with them. And that's great. That's why we have this program. But we also don't want to use it. We don't want to use our own experience as kind of like a blueprint for what they should or shouldn't do, right? Just because we did it a certain way doesn't mean that our mentees have to do it exactly that way. We also want to remember that our mentees are part of a multicultural environment. So even though maybe you and your mentee share a cultural background, that doesn't mean you know exactly what their family's like or exactly what their cultural expectations are. Even when you do share the same background or similar background. So we definitely want to make sure that we're taking time to learn about them and understand that, something that comes up a lot is that kind of those cultural concepts of individuality versus collectivism. And so for a lot of the young women that we work with, they're coming from cultures, not all of them, but many of them are coming from cultures that, really value the family unit, not to say that others don't, but just in a different way, and kind of have expectations. Their parents or guardians have expectations for them, and they're that's what they're going to do or expected to do. For some of us, maybe we're like, well, just because my mom wanted me to be a lawyer, like I wasn't going to do that. I wanted to do whatever I want to do, and you should do the same. Well, it might not be as easy for them to kind of navigate those expectations from their family. So just something to be aware of. The other thing is that your mentor sessions are not lectures. You want to make sure that you're leaving space for the mentee to talk. You're asking lots of open-ended questions, and you're checking in with them regularly to make sure that they're following along and that you're on the same page. So that's really important because it's really easy to kind of run off with your topics and get really passionate about whatever skills you want to teach your mentees about, and maybe they have no idea what you're talking about. So make sure that you're checking in with them regularly about whatever it is that you want to share with them, whatever the skills are you want to share with them, but also about, them personally, how their day's going and how classes are going. I don't know why I keep doing that. Here we go. Okay, so some important policies and procedures to keep in mind. There's a more extensive list of do's and don'ts in the mentor instructional guide, but just some of the key ones we wanted to touch on. Please stay consistent and reliable with scheduling. We ask that you do no more than 2 reschedules throughout the 9-week mentoring round. Please CC the Speak program team when you're communicating with your mentee via email. The main way that we communicate with mentees is through email. So please CC us on all of those emails, because what happens is sometimes mentors try to reschedule things and they don't CC us, and we're coordinating with the school to make sure that there's an empty classroom for the girls to do their sessions in and so forth. So it's really important that we're involved in all of the communication. We're also held responsible for the experience that the girls are having in the program. So please include us in the communication so we can keep track of that. Please don't ask the mentees for their personal contact information. You'll already have their email, and that's the main way that we communicate with them. If for some reason you want their address or their phone number or something, as they're still in the program, please talk to us first and we can help you with that. Along the same lines, be careful offering financial support or physical resources without talking to us first, because we are a nonprofit. We do have to process donations of any kind in a very particular way. So it's really important that you communicate with us first if you'd like to send your mentee something, some kind of book or anything. We've had it happen before, and we can definitely help you with that, but we just have to go through the proper procedures. So for scheduling, please, if you look at when you receive your match announcement, when you're matched with the mentee, it'll have 9 dates, and those are the 9 sessions that have been scheduled with your mentee. So when you get the match announcement, that's a great time to look over those dates and check with your calendar and make sure that all of those dates are days that you're available. And once you accept the match announcement, we'll send out calendar invites for all of those with the link to the Zoom video conference meeting room that you'll be using to do your sessions in. So those will be in your calendar already, and you'll just have to go through and accept all of those calendar invites. It's a little bit annoying, you'll get all 9 of them at once, but then once you accept them, then it's automatic from there. And so each week it'll send you a reminder, and then it'll be like, hey, you have a session in 5 minutes, like get ready. So they're usually about 45 minutes. They are happening during school hours. Some of the schools do them at their lunchtime, and so the girls have to run and get their lunch and then come to the class and set up. So they might be, 5 minutes late or so. But just be aware we're there. We're helping make sure that you get connected with your mentee at that time. Please notify us and the mentee if you need to reschedule. It's really important to notify the mentee because they are so young. They can end up taking it really personally if their mentors become inconsistent and are continuously trying to reschedule without any explanation. They start to kind of internalize that. And so we really want to make sure that we're empowering them and treating them as equals. And so if you do need to reschedule last minute, please email us and your mentee and say, hey, I had a meeting move. I really need to reschedule. I'm so sorry. When can we do the makeup session? And then the mentor program coordinator will help you set up the makeup session. If you do need to reschedule, please try to reschedule at least 24 hours in advance. As I said, we have to set up time with the school to do, set up the classroom or computer lab or whatever. And also, as I mentioned, some of the girls are doing this during their lunch period. So we want to be able to tell them, a day before if they don't have to do that, if they don't have to, rush and get their lunch and everything. So please try to let us know at least 24 hours in advance. And again, no more than 2 reschedules a mentoring round. When you get your match announcement and you get those 9 dates right there, that's before the round has started. So if you need to change anything, if like at that time that you will be out of town, for example, that's a great time to say, these 2 dates, I'm actually going to be out of town. Can we set alternate times for those 2 dates? And we could go ahead and do that for you ahead of time, and then that doesn't count as rescheduling because we're doing it, far in advance. So that's definitely a good thing to synchronize your calendars when you get the invites. Be sure to accept the calendar invites. As I mentioned, that's how you, 1, let us know if you're going to be attending, and then 2, that activates the automatic reminders. So that's really important so that you'll get those reminders. This is one of the reminders that you'll get. So you'll normally get it, I believe, the day before and then 10 minutes before the session, or something along those lines. And so it will have the title, it'll say mentor session, it'll have the date, you could see on that yellow arrow, that's the date and time. And then in the body of the invite, it has the link for how you're going to join the online video conferencing room. And so when the time comes, you would just click that link. And then where that green arrow is, I hope you can see it. Let me try to move this here, if I can move that. I don't know if that's in your way. So here, if you need to change your mind for some reason, if something came up, you can change that. You can change your RSVP if you're going to be a yes, maybe, or no. If you're like, actually, oh no, I can't actually make this one. Click no, and then email us, follow-up email us and your mentee to let us know that you can't come, and we'll help you with that. Okay, so the 3 focus areas are the areas that are mentioned in the handbook, and they're mentioned in the Mentor Instructional Guide and in the Mentor Instructional Guide video. So this is kind of the foundation of our program and the foundation of the experience that the mentees have, really. So the mentors are helping with skills acquisition, their career ecosystem, and civic engagement. And so we'll just review those quickly, or briefly rather. So skills acquisition, as was mentioned in the video and in our screening call, so you're going to teach your mentee 9 skills, teach is, pretty formal. You're going to introduce them to 9 skills over the course of the 9-week mentoring round. So 1 component skill per session. And so if you have 3 skills over 9 sessions, did I just say that wrong? So yes, you're going to teach them 3 skills over 9 sessions. And so 3 skills over 9 sessions, that means you have 3 sessions per skill. It's a lot of 3s, so I get confused sometimes. But that's why we have this nifty graphic here. So your teachable skill number 1, you would break that down into the first session. You're going to talk about the first component of that skill. And then the second session, you'll talk about the second component of that skill. And the third session, the third component. Pretty self-explanatory. So you're just going to break it down into more, easily digestible pieces for your mentee. And it also gives you time to really kind of go in depth into whatever skill it is that you're teaching them. This is really important because this is what we tell our partner schools, that, this is what the girls are going to get out of this program, and this is why it's worth it for them to invest financially in paying for this program, so that the girls don't have to pay for it. The schools are paying for it, so we have to convince them why. So we use these skills to explain kind of some of the more concrete outcomes that the girls are getting. They're going to learn how to, do these things depending on the different skills that the mentors have provided for us in the instructional guide. So some examples, being assertive is one that has been done a couple of times. So you could break that down into how to learn from those around you. The second session, you would talk about stepping up for opportunities. And the third session, following through on your commitments. And the same for, job interviewing. You could break it down into those 3 component pieces. If you want to do some skills that are more specific to your career, you can. Here we have examples of, for example, like a medical provider can talk about how to do a patient intake. Or if you work in marketing, you could talk about, how to do a sales pitch or the basics, marketing basics, researching, planning, executing. So it kind of just depends on what you're most familiar with and what you have found useful. Something to think about is if you have a particular skill that, through doing, through discussing it with your mentee, you could use it to learn more about them. You can do that skill first, so that way that's a great way to kind of build the relationship. So for example, we had somebody do self-care, and they broke that down into, learning how to manage your schedule and finding the things that you're passionate about. Like, those are great ways to get to know your mentee a little bit. So that would be a great skill to do first. And so that way you can kind of use that as an excuse to get to know each other a little bit better. Something to think about. So in the mentor instructional guide, each of the 9 sessions has a corresponding session guide. It's just 1 page. They're all identical. And so you write down your teachable skill, and then it has a space for your component skill, and then an example, a work example, so a time that you use that skill. You want to kind of just make sure that you've jotted down something there to kind of remind you of, like, when was a good time that I, used XYZ skill, and so that you can really put it into context for your mentee. And then you're going to do a test of acquisition. And so that's just kind of a formal way of saying a learning activity, right? So you're going to do something with them right there on the phone call. It can be a little role play. You could ask them to do a little presentation. You could do, a pop quiz, just anything to make sure that they're engaged with you and that they're following along and kind of putting that skill into action with you in a practice setting. The career ecosystem is basically our way of saying your immediate professional network. So who do you interact with daily? What do they do? How do you all work together in whatever work environment you're in? And so there's a little web on the Mentor Instructional Guide that you can use to fill in to kind of think about who are the people that you want to kind of share with your mentee. Like your mentee probably doesn't know a lot about what your job is and what it's like to work in your office or in your professional setting. So it's great to explain to her some of the different people that you work with daily. And maybe she's like, oh, I didn't know that, that job existed in this field. So you can tell them a little bit more about that. And then if you tell them about somebody and they're kind of interested, you can maybe see about putting them in touch and walking her through what that's like to network with someone and reach out with someone. If it's okay with your coworker and, the mentee is interested in doing so. Oh, sorry, just to cover this. So this isn't something that you need to do separately during your mentoring sessions. This is something that you're just incorporating into your conversations about the skills that you're teaching your mentee. So for example, when you go over your work example of when your workplace situation, of when you used a particular skill, you can kind of incorporate some of the people that you work with into those stories to kind of explain, who are the different people that you're working with and what they do. So civic engagement is the third focus area of the mentor program. And that's just because, we're a small nonprofit. We run on volunteers. We think it's very important to give back to our communities and society in this way. And we really want to pass that on to the young people that we're working with. So it's a great topic for you to cover when there's a little bit of extra time in your mentoring session. If you've already talked about your skills, talking about civic engagement in an organic and natural way. What are some of the things that you've done to volunteer? What were those experiences like? Asking your mentees what kind of issues they see in their communities that they want to do something about. And have they ever thought of volunteering or participating in some way, student government, clubs, and then helping them maybe research some volunteer opportunities. We don't expect you to find a volunteer opportunity for them, but we do really want you to kind of help them start thinking about ways that they can get involved, especially because it's such an important part of applying for colleges. They really want to see that young people are doing more extracurriculars and volunteerism. And then also it's a great way to build their professional network and gain experience, especially leadership experience if they're in clubs or anything like that. So this is a great topic to cover when you've gone over your skills. Another topic you can cover if you have extra time, and just something to remember to check in on every once in a while, is the resume. So we've provided the girls with a resume template. It's not like an official resume that you or I might have. It's more just to get them familiar with the idea of what a resume is and what should be included on one. A lot of them have never seen one before or know what it's for. So they have a little template that they are kind of working on filling in. So if you could just ask them whenever you have time, oh, how's your resume going? Did you include the skills that we talked about on your resume from last time? Another way that you can kind of have a conversation around this is helping them see their achievements in a really positive way. Learning how to market yourself is definitely a skill that takes a lot of practice and sometimes a lot of guidance. And so, we have young girls who are like, oh, I don't do anything else. I'm just the president of this club, but it doesn't really do anything. Like, what? No, that's a great achievement. So let's find a way how to word that and include that in your resume. And also discussing best practices for resumes. So what are kind of the do's and don'ts? I get hundreds of resumes for all of the mentors that apply for our program, and I've never seen, no two are alike. So everyone has different ideas about what to include on resumes or how to format them, but there are some general do's and don'ts, right? There shouldn't be any typos. It should be really well organized, that kind of things. That should be, chronological, all of that stuff. So definitely talk to them about some of the things that you've learned about resumes, and remind them that everyone does it differently. Every field has different expectations. So it's always important to just reach out to different people for feedback with your resume. So these are all topics that you can talk to them about when you bring this up. The session guides, again, they're not scripts, so try to follow along. They're just there to give you guidance of the flow of the session, but it's an organic conversation with your mentee. So talk to them about what you talked about last week, or what they're going through, personally or at school or whatever. If you get sidetracked and start talking about personal topics, that's fine. We really want you to build that relationship with the mentee. Just make sure that you circle back to the skills, at some point in the session, or, in the next session is fine, because we do want to make sure they get that information that you've prepared for them. So, the anatomy of a mentoring session. Okay, so you have your completed instructional guide, you've picked your skills, you've accepted your match with your mentee, and now you're joining your first mentoring session. So you join the call by clicking the link on the calendar invite, and then when you're connected, you'll be put in a breakout room with your mentee, and so it'll just be you and the mentee. And then the mentor program coordinator, somebody from Speak will probably be kind of popping in and out of the different breakout rooms to make sure everything's going smoothly. And so at that point, introduce yourself, get to know each other. Some of the mentees can seem very shy, so it's really important that you remember to, ask open-ended questions, not just yes or no questions, because they will just say yes or no. So, ask them about what their family is like, what their favorite classes are, what their goals are for the school year, or, after high school, etc. Get to know them and let them get to know you a little bit on a personal level as well. Tell them about your family and where you're from, and, not just what your career is. Introduce the first skill. So the mentees have they have their own workbook that kind of corresponds to the mentor instructional guide. So they're very aware of the format of the sessions and of the skills, and that you're going to be teaching them skills every session. So it's not going to be a surprise or awkward or anything. You could just say, so I prepared a topic for today. I wanted to talk to you about communication and, email etiquette, or whatever it is that you wanted to talk to them about. Definitely gauge their interest in what they already know about that topic before you just dive in. because they might not know anything about it. They might already be really familiar with it. So you really want to make sure you're adapting, your approach depending on what they already know. Discuss your workplace story and including, people from your career ecosystem in that story. This is a really great way to give them a little bit of a glimpse of how these skills apply in real life. And, if you're using examples from your current workplace, that gives them a glance at what it's like to work in your office. And it kind of humanizes you as well, to give them examples of, when you really successfully used the skill, or when you didn't use the skill and made a mistake and you wish you had. So this is a great opportunity to kind of tell them more about your actual job and what that's like, and how these skills can be, applied to day-to-day life. Check in regularly with them to make sure they're following along. Again, open-ended questions. If you just say, did you understand that? They might just say yes, and they might not. So make it a conversation, and ask lots of questions. Introduce your test of acquisition. So again, they know it's coming. It's not a surprise. It'd be like, okay, I have a little activity for us to do. I really wanted to role play, or, we're talking about email etiquette. So let's draft an email together. So you tell me, how should I start it out? Whatever it is that you want to do, be really positive and supportive. If you do a little test, a little learning activity, and they don't get anything right, it's okay. It's not a real test. So just be supportive, and if they're participating, that's great. Ask them about their resume and how that's going. And then don't forget about civic engagement whenever there's opportunity to bring those topics up. And then, don't forget to get to know each other. Learn more about, what's your favorite movie? What kind of music is she listening to? Just kind of those basic things to kind of to give you the chance to enter her world a little bit. Wrapping up, thank them for their time, thank them for coming, even though, it's kind of a responsibility for them to come since they've applied and signed up for the program. We still want to thank them for their time and thank them for participating. It really encourages them to keep coming. Recap what you went over, and if you assigned any homework, which I would not recommend because they might not have time to do it. But if you did, ask them to read an article or watch a video or something, just remind them and let them know that you'll be talking about it next week. There is an optional 10th session, so you'll be given the chance to do that. It kind of just depends on you and your mentee. If you want to have a final session to kind of wrap everything up, you can do an activity during that session. You can just kind of have open conversation. It's totally up to you and your mentee, and if you all have the time for it. It's just, we just want to let you know that that's a possibility for you. Closing out the mentoring round, whether it's after the 9th session or the 10th session, just make sure that you leave time to give positive feedback. Let them know all the amazing things that you've learned about them, to kind of encourage them to keep working hard and keep doing what they're doing. Discuss next steps. If you all have talked about her future goals, go over that, come up with a little action plan together. Provide any resources that you promised. If you said that you were going to send them a website or, a video or whatever the case may be, put them in contact with someone. Make sure that you're following up with that and you're doing that. Make sure you leave room for questions if she has any questions for you. And you are welcome to exchange contact information if you're both comfortable. Normally what I do is I let the mentee know that I would love to check in on her via email, if she's comfortable with that, going forward in a month or so, a couple weeks, just see how she's doing. And if she's okay with that, then I'll make sure I put it in my calendar and follow up with her. And then I can also, I provided my cell phone number and, social media if you want. And then that way they have yours and they can reach out to you if they want to. But that way it's kind of based on their level of comfortability. And so once you all are done with your mentoring round, the contact that you have with your mentee is totally up to you and the mentee. We just ask that, it's appropriate and respectful, but you're welcome to stay in touch with your mentee after you finish the mentoring round with them if you'd like, and if they'd like. The 11th session is the elusive 11th session. So we've had most of our mentors are, I shouldn't say most of our mentors, but all of our mentors are from all over. We have mentors on the West Coast, East Coast, in, Middle America, in other countries, all over the place. So we don't always have mentors in the same cities as our mentees, which is one of the great things about the video conferencing. But if you do happen to be in the same city as your mentee, the 11th session is a job site visit. And so that's something where the mentee and their guardian or parent come and visit you at work, and you give them a tour and introduce them to some people. And so really give them the chance to see what a work environment is like. And so that's something that we can definitely help you arrange if you and your mentee are in the same city. Some things to be aware of. So mentees may not always be engaged. As I said, some of them may seem a little shy. It takes time to kind of warm them up to get to get them to open up a little bit. So just please be patient. I say embrace the small wins. So if, they showed up to their session on time, great. Just, thank you so much for being here. It's so good to see you. That's great that you're so punctual. If they are, answering your questions, be like, yes, that's great. Show enthusiasm and really embrace those small acts of participation. And then they tend to snowball, and she gets more and more involved, and that's what we want to see, and more engaged. So definitely be patient and be encouraging. Mentees may not be fluent in English. We don't have a large percentage of mentees right now that are not fluent in English, but depending on the schools that we're partnering with, sometimes we do. We try to match them with people who share whatever their native language is, but if you are working with someone who you don't speak or they don't speak your language, or you don't speak their language, most of the students are learning English. So just be patient with them, and again, ask open-ended questions, because if you just ask yes or no questions, they'll just say yes or no. And so we really want to make sure that they're understanding and participating in the session, even if there might be some language barriers. Mentees might have to balance strict family expectations, as I mentioned before. Their families might have very strict expectations about, what they're going to study, or sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes some of the girls come from cultures that have very strict gender expectations because they're a young woman. They're expected to, go home and take care of their younger siblings. Or some of them are coming from families of lower socioeconomic status, and so they might have to have a part-time job to help with family bills, that kind of thing. So they might be balancing a lot of different responsibilities. So just be aware of that. So if you're like, you shouldn't be working, you should be focusing on XYZ, that might not be something that they can manage depending on their situation. So just be aware of that. The mentees may also not be interested in your profession. They may not be. We do try to connect you with mentees who have expressed that they want a job similar to yours. But again, they're 16, 15 years old. They might change their mind, and that's okay. Again, we're not judging them if they are changing their mind. That's totally okay. Find out what they are interested in. Explain to them why you chose that job that you have and what were some of the things that appealed to you. ask them, what they're looking for in a future job or a future career, and kind of have those discussions and see, if they've changed their mind, why, and have they looked into what they need to do to pursue this new career path that they're interested in. So again, just be really positive and encouraging around this, and don't take it personally if they're like, I don't really like your job. It's okay. You have plenty more to offer. So just, bear with them and explain the different options that you have for them, or that you've seen for them. Break down new concepts and terminology. This is especially, this comes up a lot when our mentors are explaining what they do, not realizing that it's actually very complicated for a young person to understand what your job is, your day-to-day job, particularly if there's a lot of, career-specific terminology. So make sure that you're really breaking down those more complex topics of what it is that you do, or whatever the skills are that you're presenting to them. Even just outside of your job, even just other stuff. I had a mentee last year, and I was explaining to her, the process of getting into undergrad and then grad school, and then, if you wanted to get your PhD or something. And I was like, yeah, so if you get your bachelor's degree, whatever. And then I was like, do you know what a bachelor's degree is? And she was like, no, I don't know. So, so make sure that we're stopping to ask them, if they're following along, if they know, what they already know, and if they need you to clarify anything. Setting your own expectations. So the video conferencing is great. It allows us to have our mentoring sessions with people who are on different sides of the country. But there are some limitations. Sometimes there's some technical difficulties. We're always there. One of our staff members is always there to help kind of facilitate the connection. And if there's really bad technical difficulties, we'll let you know, like, okay, we're gonna, reschedule the session, or just give us a couple more minutes. We're going to try to get this fixed. So just please bear with us on that. Typically, it works pretty smoothly. Homework does not always get done. If you give your mentee homework, again, they might not do it. They have homework from being in school, so we don't want to give them a lot of other activities to do outside of the session. I would recommend trying to keep as much as you can in the session during the session. But if there's something you want them to see or do between this session and your next one, that's fine. Just be prepared. They might not do it. So you've been warned. If I will say, giving them like a video to watch, like a TED Talk or something, usually is a lot more, you'll be a lot more successful with that versus giving them, like an article to read or something to write. So just set your expectations. And then mentees may not be as action-oriented as you are. And I say that because we've had a lot of instances where mentors are super excited to meet their mentee and help them kind of, guide them through the post-high school planning process of looking at colleges or thinking about what they want to study. And so they're like, oh my gosh, okay, you want to study psychology? Well, I Googled and I found this program that's in a school in the city where you said you wanted to study. Here's the website, look it up, contact the financial aid office, see what kind of resources they have for you. And then the next week they're like, oh, so did you do that? And then the mentee's like, nah, I didn't do that. Like, like that's okay. They might not be, taking all the information that you're giving them and turning around and doing exactly that, step by step right at that moment. It could be because maybe they're sophomores and, they don't feel the pressure of looking for schools just yet. But give them the information still, and encourage them to, do the research or use whatever the resources are that you're offering them, because when it does come up, they're going to remember that. They're going to be like, oh yeah, my mentor said I should look up, a whatever scholarship or whatever it is that you're suggesting, right? My mentor mentioned something about informational interviews. I don't remember what that is. I'm going to email her, right? So it might come to them when they need that information. And so, that doesn't mean that they don't care. That doesn't mean that they're like not interested in, what you have to offer if they don't, take it home and do everything right away. We just have to meet them where they're at and give them the information so that they have it when they're ready for it. And again, just be encouraging and let them know that, if they want to talk more about it, you're happy to. Yeah, don't worry about it if they're not, jumping on every piece of advice that you have for them at that moment. It's okay. They're gonna take it in and process it. And usually they end up asking more questions about it later on in the mentoring round. So. Okay, so something for you to just have on your radar. We have a semi-regular speaker series. We try to do a live stream speaker once a month or once every other month, depending on the speaker's schedules. And so this is something that is geared kind of towards the mentees, but all of the speakers are really great, and it's definitely information that benefits anyone that watches it. I facilitate some of them, and they are awesome speakers. And so they talk on a wide range of kind of a wide array of topics, from, what it's like assimilating to American culture or adapting to American culture, what it's like being a woman in STEM or, a person of color in this field, or, finding your own path to college, all kinds of things. Balancing, work and family, or family expectations and personal dreams or goals, all kinds of things. So they're really great. We definitely open it up to mentors as well as mentees. If you follow us on social media, Speak Mentorship on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, we usually advertise when we have speakers coming up. And it's just a link that you register for, and then we'll send you a reminder, and then we'll be like, hey, this speaker is live now. And so you just kind of go on the computer, and it's really easy to do. And then that's something that's really cool for you and your mentee to do together. You can kind of encourage her to, go to or watch the speaker, and then you guys can talk about it at your next session. So good idea there. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email me them. I'll get back to you usually right away, within a day or two. Otherwise, you are fully onboarded and ready to be matched with a mentee. Go through your instructional guide again now that you have all this information, and make sure that it's reflective of what you want to share with your mentee, and that all of your session guides are complete. And just, again, please let me know if you have any questions at all. And we're really excited to have you become a Speak mentor. Thank you.